Today on Hitting Home with Mike and Arif, we have guest Robin Jones, who has a 32-year career as a realtor in the Barrie area and an appraiser in the Barrie area. So stay tuned. There'll be a lot of interesting stuff we'll be talking about today. Welcome to Hitting Home with Mike and Arif, and we're here with Robin Jones, Barrie realtor and appraiser, and a 3-decade-long career. You've seen a lot of ups and downs and cycles in that 3-decade time frame. Looking at the changes that we're seeing right now in the market, would you say we're repeating a previous cycle that we've been through, or do you think we're in a whole new territory right now?
Well, thanks for having me on, Mike and Arif. It's a pleasure to be here. And
Thank you.
That's a great question. If I had the true answer to where we're going and where we are particularly, I would not be here. I'd be on a beach somewhere living the life of leisure. However,
it's like having the lottery numbers, I guess.
That's right. However, we look back in history to look at where we are today, and we've always known that real estate is in cycles. And after being through a few myself, I think we're looking for some stability in the marketplace. Last year, some sectors of the marketplace and business in general were low, but overall, we've got some good, strong economic indicators that are saying the economy's good. So, it's difficult to say whether or not the real estate market's going to be.
So, now, Robin, you're an economist by training.
Well, yeah, virtually by training. I mean, I have a degree in science, but for the most part, my business as a realtor and an appraiser has been I've taken a lot of time looking back in history for various projects and assignments to see where we're going and dealing with developers and where they might be able to project their market expectations. So yeah, by virtue of that and long 32 years of reading and following articles and being engaged in the associations that I belong to, we get a lot of opportunity to be an economist. And yeah, I do refer to myself as a land economist.
Yeah.
So.
And there has been a calming in the last year or two in the markets, which is not necessarily a bad thing. But who are you seeing out there? Are your clients who are the buyers today? I guess is the
well, we're dealing a lot. There's the market's segmented. We've got buyers who are people that are just going through the motions of moving, downsizing, upsizing, that sort of thing. Those are the market people that are what I consider to be the true participants in the real estate market. And then the other individuals are those that are speculating whether they're buying an investment property, selling an investment property, buying a property to fix it up and sell it. Those, when we deal with those people in that speculation, that's where a lot of the media sensationalism is driven.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah. I think that's a great point, though, and maybe let's talk about the investor segment a little bit down the road. But let's actually focus in on that one point that you just made, which is the media frenzy or the media speculation. And I think one of the things that I'm most interested in is really the human element, which is the media actually reporting on what the humans are doing, or are the humans doing what the media is prompting? and that's really for me, it's really interesting.
Marshall McLuhan, like
a little bit,
yes.
a little bit.
Well, when I went back and analyzed the recession in the early 90s, it was entirely, there was a lot of press that happened in late 1989 and early 1990 that was what I called self-fulfilling prophecy.
Absolutely.
They just went nuts. And we back then we didn't have the internet to search out. Now, that's a good thing and a bad thing, but we just had the newspapers, and when the newspapers all jumped on board and the TV were all on board that recession, everyone started digging their elbows, they stopped buying, and the whole economy just went into this absolute despair.
Mm-hmm. So 2 years ago, the media started saying, all of Asia and Southeast Asia is moving to Canada and buying up all the real estate. So if you don't buy today, there's going to be nothing for you to buy.
Well, that's right.
That's essentially what happened.
We had basically we had 6 months leading up to it, but the first quarter of 2017 was insanity.
Yeah.
I almost just stopped selling. I was just, there was always somebody unhappy in the equation of buying and selling real estate. It was no longer buyer, seller, happy, realtors happy, everybody's happy. That's what it was like for 30 years, and then 2017 it went insane.
Well, Y2K happened as well, right? People said the end of the world is going to happen at Y2K.
Yeah.
So. Bottom line is everybody needs a place to live. Right. And so long as demand is there, and the population is growing, so demand is not waning by any means. I sat in this studio in 2011 when they had a news program here, and was told that the market's going to crash. We're in a bubble, it's going to crash overnight. And I spent a few minutes elaborating on how I believe. I don't think so. And that was 2011, and now we're 2019, and only now are we starting to see that leveling off and the pendulum maybe swinging back to center on that market, which again I think is a good thing from the consumer's perspective because it'll keep prices in check. The other part of that equation, I mean, the two things that affect the market is affordability and mortgage prices. Those are the two main pressures on the consumer. And affordability is leveled off. We're still grappling with the mortgage. Do you think that we will see the government come around and maybe reverse some of the pressures they put on the mortgage industry?
Well, you know, our discussions as a board and through AREA in the Ontario Real Estate Corp, you know, we basically look at our relationship with the government. We are constantly engaged in that with them in terms of where they're going with it, and we talk about B20 and some of those stress tests that have caused grief. And our present federal government doesn't look like they're going to be pulling that back in any fashion.
No, this is an election hedge right now.
Yeah, you know, we may see it change as you know, they start to have to throw some carrots out.
I'm hopeful, and you and I have sat in the rooms together with our MPs and MPPs, both being on the Political Action Committee for CREA.
Yes.
And yeah, we've seen the feedback. I mean, my hope is that with this experiment, if you want to call it that, with trying to tweak and manipulate the financing for housing across the country, I'm hoping that some lessons have and will be learned by some of the political leaders who are pulling those strings there.
Yeah,
is that too optimistic?
No,
of
I
me,
don't think
or?
that's. I don't think that. Well, you know, unfortunately, we end up with history repeating itself over and over as governments don't learn from one government to the next, and some of them don't want to learn because they're a different political party and they want to do something different.
It'll be different when we do it, though.
That's right.
Yeah.
It'll be different when we do it, right? So I think that you know, it's people don't realize that it's all an ecosystem. You pull back somewhere, and all of a sudden it hurts somebody else. And we're finding that while the B20 and the stress tests were worked in Toronto and Vancouver, they hurt some of the people in the rural areas, and, and that's what we
so
know
let's
for sure.
let's look at this. I mean, because if you think about it, I mean, our Canadian real estate prices, which there is no Canadian market, we talked about that before the show, but if you look 2 years ago, there was no hysteria. There was no need to put in this stress test to actually cool the market. In fact, the very groups and people who created this pendulum shift where things went out of control are the same people who then said later on, we need to put in a stress test to calm it down. Prior to saying that we have this foreign buyers crisis where there's going to be zero inventory whatsoever, there was no hysteria. The market was doing what the market did. Unfortunately, it didn't serve some people, and it was a political, if you ask my opinion, it was a political maneuver to try and quell the market, to try and soften the market and make housing available for everybody. So the question is, are they really just trying to reset by adding more medicine to the mix instead of actually looking at the root cause?
Well, I know on that. I don't actually know if they're really even thinking too much about B20. I mean, if they were, I mean, we know as participants in the marketplace how it's affected us, and seemingly it's affected the first-time home buyers more than anybody. So that's what we're always talking about, is creating more housing, affordable housing, and that's that entry-level part of the marketplace that seems to be so important to the public in general. Everyone's worried about their kids. You know, are they ever going to own a home or have the opportunity to own a home? You know, it's not as much of a given that they have to own a home. It's people make the choice.
Yeah.
You know, a third of our population live in rental accommodation, and that's fine. But when we're dealing with I don't think the government's even really paying much attention to that. I mean, what I like presently right now is this effort to reduce the amount of red tape to actually bring housing to the market. You know, we're dealing with now a subdivision could take 8 years before it gets up to speed. And you know, people think of the 8 years in terms of a long time, but that's actually a lot of carrying costs and money that they pass on to consumers. So the more that our government works right now to eliminate red tape, the better it is in the long run, I think.
So let's pick up on that when we come back from the break. Let's actually explore some of the red tape that you're talking about, and maybe your association's got some ideas and some guidance for government representatives to listen to.
All right.
So stay tuned. We'll be right back after this break. welcome back to Hitting Home with Mike and Arif. And Robin Jones, you're a broker with Remax J Hallmark in Barrie. You're also an appraiser, and you're the president-elect with the Barrie and District Area Realtors Association.
Yes,
Thank you for joining us this week. And we were talking before the break about red tape and essentially government manipulation, if you will. Those are my words, not yours, but part of your lobby association is guiding and providing local and market insight to those who are our legislators and our regulators. So I'd love to hear more about your perspective on that.
Yeah, the Ontario Realtor Party spent a great deal of effort working with our provincial government in dealing with red tape issues. You know, it's been long recognized that one of our biggest problems with affordable housing and housing in general, just being able to provide it for those people that need it, is the fact that we just have a lack of supply. And red tape has become a huge issue throughout the province. The province knows it. They're making their efforts to change the red tape. It's got some hiccups that it's got to go through to get it to work, but it's good to recognize it. You know, we've got basically 30% of people in Ontario are single people living in homes. We've got 5,000 bedrooms that are empty. So if we can start freeing up some of that supply, whether it's in the form of apartments, and you know, there's a lot of people that would be interested in having an apartment so they could stay in their home for an extra few years.
Yeah. Seniors.
Seniors.
Second set
you know,
of
if they could
eyes
have have a second set of eyes. I mean, I would think it'd be a great thing if you wanted your parents to stay in the house and they had a young couple that would live in an apartment inside the space. But you know, there's so much red tape, and it costs a lot of money. If we could get our builders, our building departments and our planning departments, you know, more on side of saying yes rather than saying no all the time. There's a lot of people that walk into those rooms.
Mike,
encourage a lot more investment.
Oh,
you know what, Robin, you just lit a fire inside me, and so to TV land out there, this is totally unscripted. But Mike, you and I were talking a few days ago about this, and I'm so glad you brought that up because I wouldn't have thought to bring it up just in this show right now. And that was about the fact that we're so busy trying to reinvent or bring in new ideas to address the core problems that we're not actually addressing the core problem. And Mike, I want to hand this one over to you because you had some great insight into those 5,000 rooms that are sitting empty and sustainability.
There is enough shelter square footage within this country to house us probably many times over. It's just not being used efficiently. And we need to take a new look, and this is a whole other show where we may want to talk on this.
Yeah, but we'd love to have you on it.
we need to rethink our concept of how many square feet per person we need, and I think in Canada it's probably that number's higher than anywhere else in the world.
So we're going out talking about building new supply and new product. We're going about talking about you know, tiny homes and all these sorts of things that take time, policy,
lots of money,
zoning changes, etc. When we already have an existing supply, we're just not using it as efficiently as we could. Maybe speak to that. You know, and
that's definitely an issue. I mean, you know, I've got a friend who's just going through a process right now, and it's $2,600 committee of adjustment. They want 4 parking spaces, you know, for 2 parking spaces for a 1-bedroom apartment. You know, we're in a society that wants to start promoting, you know, basically being commuters or using transit. Yet we still cater to the car.
Yeah.
You know, and we all see it in the long-term future that, you know, we won't be driving our cars anymore, and there'll be fewer cars on the road, and we've seen some future plans where 4 lanes are taken down to 2 lanes, and you know, everyone's using electric vehicles.
Well, we're going in the other direction though.
Yeah,
we're going to be widening 400 highway.
We're still looking in these planning processes where we've still got our heads screwed on backwards, and no one's looking forwards.
But if we actually look beyond our own borders, if we look at Asia and if we look at Europe, they have embraced public transit. They've embraced active transportation. If you look at Hong Kong, there's a ban on cars, and if you want to bring in a car, you're paying 300% tax just to bring that car in. Everybody's taking a cab, everybody's taking Uber, everybody's using public transit. If you look at the mall, if you look at the plaza actually in North America, they're designing them to, well, one, to put residential living mix in the mix there. And they're also reducing the amount of parking, or they're lobbying local government to reduce the amount of parking for those very reasons. But for some reason, we, as a society, love our car.
Yeah.
We also love our square footage, right?
I think a big part of that, if I may, is just you look at some of those cities, Asian cities, their pressure from their population growth hit them a lot earlier than it's hit us.
Yes,
and they've had
absolutely.
time to adjust to it. Whereas here, it hasn't really been an issue. We're only now just on the cusp of having population growth be an issue and be a burden. And now we're starting to deal with some of these
However,
things.
if we
We're
want
late to
to,
the table.
if we want to look at how we can do something right, we should be looking outwards
sure.
to
The templates are
examples.
there.
The templates are there.
Well,
So-
we're not as constrained by them by terms of size. We've got 27% of Canada's population living in the GTA.
Right.
And it's only that proportion is probably going to go up. We've got,
And I think-
out of 37 million people, we've got over almost 10 million down in this GTA-H, and Barrie's been brought into that. Now, Innisfil's been treated as a suburb of Toronto, and we're going to, and we see that. That's why I say GTA-H. It goes Hamilton and expands us out a little
Golden
bit more.
Horseshoe.
Yeah, the Golden Horseshoe. We're still constrained by the fact that we still have this massive amounts of space, and we don't have. We're so far into all our existing builds that we don't have the infrastructure necessary to do the transit. But what we do need to do is intensify and create jobs in more localized areas. So when we're dealing, downtown Barrie, we're probably looking at 13 high-rises going up in the next couple of years. But again, we still deal with the red tape, and that'll take time.
Yeah.
But in terms of people being able to live longer in their houses rather than move out, like the seniors, if we can get them to free up some time, then that would be good.
And is that, so you got 1 minute, is that something that you're seeing from technology base? Are you seeing developers actually adapt to the change in sort of economic
Absolutely.
habits, et cetera?
Yeah, we've seen a massive increase in amount of basically the low end housing in terms of multiple uses, right? So townhouses are primarily one of the key driving factors to the marketplace in Barrie for the last 6 or 7 years. And now we're getting medium density buildings, low rise density buildings. Last year, the apartment marketplace, that sort of 2-bedroom, 1-bedroom condominium was really what was one of the driving forces towards our higher increase in prices last year, the single detached.
We're moving in
really
the right direction.
So when we come back from the break, let's talk about 3 things. Mike, well, one, we need to finish up on red tape. 2, Mike, I know you've got a burning issue to talk about headlines. And I think we also want to talk about the sort of deception of the decrease in house price, right? So
Yes.
what actually makes
How
up that
we
headline?
interpret our statistics. And we have an economist and appraiser here, so I
Sure.
want to put the question to him.
Absolutely. Stay tuned. We'll be right back.
And welcome back to Hitting Home with Mike and Arif. And before the break, I could see you had a question you wanted to ask Robin with regards to red tape and that. So let's go to
Absolutely.
that.
Well, listen, I mean, Robin, you are part of a lobby association. You provide guidance, obviously, back and forth, as we talked about earlier. But we are going into a federal election this year. So the campaign buses are going to start rolling. And I presume your organization, both locally and nationally, is going to be wanting to hear what the leaders are offering. And hopefully you're providing them some guidance.
Well, thank you for asking that question. I mean, BDAR, the Barrie District Association of Realtors, really is an information source for our members to connect with local politicians. So what we try to do is make sure that the public has knowledge of what's going on and connect the knowledge together with allowing them to make an informed decision. So we're not necessarily promoters of individual political pundits. What we're looking for is information that we can provide to the public and our members and provide feedback from our members about issues such as red tape, on how that can help people make an informed decision.
Terrific. So that wheel is, I'm assuming, churning already.
Yeah, we're constantly, we have, Mike and I do work with the Ontario Realtor Party, through our association, so we have an opportunity to meet with Andrea Congen and Doug Downey, and also we deal with our local politicians as well.
Do you actually have an opportunity for public engagement, though? Do you want to throw anything out to our public right now who's watching?
Yeah, well, we don't have anything on the go right now for that purpose. BDAR is constantly creating a forum for that, and we will be creating forums for that. So if you can check that or look for us on Facebook on BDAR, you'll find that we will create opportunities for our politicians to come in and get feedback directly from the public and our members.
And there's always Hitting Home with Mike and Arif.
Absolutely. This is the place to be.
So, Mike, let's bring it into to the stuff that's really.
Well, and part of that is sometimes setting the record straight,
Yeah.
be it with our politicians and that. And it's always been frustrating for me at times, looking at the headlines and how media will often interpret the statistics. Now, Canadian Real Estate Association, they put out a set of statistics that barometer of the market from month to month and the changes that take place. And what's really frustrating me, and I saw it in the last few days in 2 different articles, both touched on the same thing, because the statistics for February have just come out, and what was pointed out was that average real estate prices between January and February had dropped by a few percentage points. So the headlines end up being home prices have dropped 3% in the last month. And that's just not the case. It's the buying behaviors have changed because of the stress tests and the more pressures on buyers. They're buying less expensive homes. So yes, the average price of homes sold is dropping as a result, but it doesn't mean yours or mine or anyone else's home dropped by 3% in that month.
And that's the misleading
and
part
that's
of
what's
the headline.
frustrating to see.
It's a big frustration point. I mean, you know, media jumps on whatever headline they can to make it work to the best to create the click-through media. You want people to be able to click through or else be sensational about it. All of a sudden, it becomes a topic of discussion everywhere, and people get concerned about it. And you know, not to plug realtors per se, but they are the best people to talk to because the market's so segmented.
We're closest to the front lines.
Yeah, we've created all these new tools for realtors that they can drill down and do specific statistical analysis relative to your particular property. Because every property class suffers difference. Last year, like I said, you know, those apartments went up in price. Single family detached on average went down in price. That doesn't mean that a house that was turnkey went up and a house that was needed a lot of work went down. There is all these factors that affect every part of these properties.
So let's actually clarify that really, really slowly. I don't mind doing this every once in a while, but the truth of the matter is, and where that statistic or where that headline is misleading is this. Your house and my house did not lose 3% in value from last month to this month. That's not what the statistics said. What the statistics said was the buying habits of those in the market went for homes, or the homes that moved were homes that were a little cheaper. So it might be the type of home, it might have been condos or townhomes or semis instead of single detached, but the actual product that moved on aggregate was of a slightly lesser value.
Let me throw in a food analogy for you. Food analogies always work good.
Absolutely.
If in
I'm hungry.
January, 70% of pizzas sold were large pizzas, and then in February, only 60% of pizza sold were large pizzas. It doesn't mean that pizzas got smaller between January and February. It means that people switched from large pizzas to medium or small. That's the difference.
And now I want a pizza.
There you go. It's a little early.
But thank you for that. We've only got 2 minutes. So Mike, we're on this topic, obviously. We're talking about headlines. But what do you want to the public to know?
Well, you know, when it comes to headlines, you know, just basically stay calm. Don't be panicked by what you read. I mean, you know, even if you drill down a little bit, you read a little bit further through the headline, you're going to find that it's basically been sensationalized. Like, I mean, we've got this one here, you know, stand by for slowdown, warns RBC Economics. And we see growth changing from 1.7% to 1.5%. It's still growth. I mean, it's still a good thing. But we get all these different kind of headlines that make you nervous. Yeah. But you know, as long as you buy and sell in the same market, you're not going to lose. It doesn't matter whether it's a buyer's market or a seller's market. What we like about the stable market that's coming forward in this year that we all foresee is that it's going to give you time to sell. It's going to give you time to buy. Yeah,
and you made a great point, and I'd like you to elaborate. And it's great. It doesn't matter what kind of market you're in if you're buying and selling in that same market. Elaborate on that.
Well, you know, Robin, you got 30 seconds to elaborate.
Okay, and you know, in 2017, you're like, I should have sold then. The market was, you know, $100,000 higher than it is now, but no, you'd have to buy something that was $100,000 higher. So now it's $100,000 less. You buy something that you sell for $100,000 less, and you buy something that's $100,000 less. You're still in net gain.
One side.
So what I want to offer you is this, obviously to you and all of your members who are working in real estate and in the mortgage industry as well. We are going into the spring market. Hopefully we do see some activity, healthy activity, educated activity, and I wish you and all of your colleagues in real estate the very best for the market going forward, and hopefully you get some really good and well-engaged clients out there. But I want to thank you, Robin, for joining us this week on Hitting Home, and we certainly look forward to having you back on the show.
Well, thanks, Arif, and thanks, Mike, very much for having me.
Thank you, Robin.
Absolutely. So stay tuned, and we'll see you again next week on Hitting Home.
No, we're going to shoot